Here's your host, Dennis Rimmer.
Thank you for dropping us a few minutes to listen to our projects. I'm Dennis. This is Talking Books and Stuff's podcast. And today we're having a chit chat with Chase Joynt, who is a writer and filmmaker. And Chase, first of all, thank you for taking some time rather with us. And maybe you can just tell us, who is Chase Joynt?
Oh my goodness. Want to start? Well, I'm very happy to be chatting. I'm a writer, filmmaker. I was born and raised in the suburban Toronto area and now split my time between Toronto and Los Angeles.
And you're a writer and filmmaker, is that right?
I am indeed.
But now we're talking about a book you've written. It's called Vantage Points on Media as Trans Memoir. So why this book and why now, and why wasn't it a film?
That's a great question. So the project was really born on account of the fact that after the death of my grandfather, a box of his belongings arrived to my mother's house. And as we began sorting through it, I recognized a connection to the Canadian media theorist Marshall McLuhan. And as someone who has a PhD in cinema and media studies and has a career as a filmmaker, this sparked so many different connections and possibilities. And I decided to take the leap toward a writing experiment, which was to think about family history and archives and intergenerational transmissions of knowledge alongside McLuhan's media theories.
So, for some folks who don't know, who was Marshall McLuhan? Let's start with that. And what was his influence on media studies as a whole, do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, some people know McLuhan as sort of the father of media studies. Some people think he was a genius. Some people think he was totally out to lunch. And, he's probably most remembered for the phrase, the medium is the message, which is a way of thinking about how we communicate much more than what we communicate. And one of the reasons why I was so excited by this connection to his work, all problems and caveats included, is the fact that he really understood artists to be the greatest interpreters of our times. And so he was looking to artists to chart a way forward through complex socio-political terrain. And I took that as a kind of permission to think with him.
So now he's also sort of noteworthy for saying that some mediums are hot and some are cool. What did you take from that?
I feel like the hot and cool media technology arm of McLuhan's theories is not as prevalent in my thinking, but the ways that I like to understand what he was doing is that he essentially instructs us to pay attention to the ways in which we can learn from media through their transformation. So he says something like, we can see how speeches get transformed into books and books get transformed into movies. And from a contemporary vantage point, this makes a whole lot of sense to us. But what he's really saying is, what if we look back so that we can understand how these technologies influenced who we are and how we feel about ourselves and our communities? And so it's from that place that I started to build my work.
And the book is quite a different format as such, and maybe you can just describe the thought process that went into putting it together in such a manner. We've got notes, we've got things that are found on my grandfather's box, the last page of a ledger, for example, we bought a radio for $27.85. So
exactly. That's a very funny experience of having someone leaf through the book. But one of the things that I'm trying to do is think about montage as a method. And so one of the things that we can learn from montage in the history of cinema is what happens when you put two things that weren't necessarily previously related together. Often what happens is it produces a new third form of meaning, right? That's beyond just those two things. And so I take that seriously on the page. And so I'm putting together anecdotes, conversations, sources, media technologies, as you've said, remnants from my grandfather's archival box that together as a whole make an argument about a person, place, or a thing. And part of the reason for doing that is because the project is thinking about memory, it's thinking about trauma, and these kinds of things are not linear. They're fragmented, they're disjointed, they're often disorienting. And so the book is trying to take that seriously, not as a deficiency, but as an opportunity.
And what we have is lots of different items. Of things that come across right now is Sarah McLachlan and Alexander Graham Bell's last daughter. So
Yes.
what's your connection or inspiration or attachment, shall we say, to, first of all, Sarah McLachlan?
Yeah, so Sarah McLachlan's music was playing at a very formative and violent time in my childhood. And so one of the things that it's trying to do in the book is to think about how media, so in this case, how music or the mixtape is an imprinting structure on our lives and our memories. And of course, you don't need to know anything about my history to be able to think about your own and those songs that come on the radio or come on the playlist, and you're immediately transported back into that time or place in your life. And, you know, there's a relationship that I make too to memories that my mom has. One of my favorites is the fact that as a young teen, she called into a radio station and won tickets to see the Beatles at the height of Beatlemania. And so she has her own versions of these things. And so what happens when you can cast these memories alongside each other?
And it's sort of like music. I think to me it's a popular music, not so-called classical music, whatever that's supposed to mean. The stuff you like when you're at a certain age is kind of the stuff you like for the rest of your life. Do you find that?
Yes. Yeah, I think that their music becomes such a formative way that we come to understand ourselves. So I think it's particularly pointed in those moments of radical becoming or maturation or things when lots of things are changing in our lives.
Now, did the advent and sort of demise now of videos, music videos, kind of change the way music is appreciated by listeners and viewers alike, do you think?
I mean, what I love about that, it's a very McLuhan question, right? And so I think what we could do is look back at the history of music videos. So I'm thinking about the peak of their prominence, so in the 1990s era of MTV. And I think we can connect that to the emergence of new social media technologies like TikTok, where people are most definitely still making music videos. They're just not of the same kind, and they're through a very different platform.
I remember back in those days talking to people, and we'd say to each other, well, did you see that new song by so-and-so?
Yes, I love that. Exactly.
So you're a writer, you're a filmmaker. Tell us about your filmmaking experiences. You have a couple of awards under your belt and things like that. So what are you most pleased with about your filmmaking career?
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, I started making movies in some ways because I understood there to be a lack of moving image projects about transgender life that really made sense to me. It felt like the representations were coming from outsider portraits, and I wondered what it would look like if we started telling stories for ourselves and building those worlds from the inside out. And my filmmaking has transformed in many ways since those early beginnings, but it definitely is still rooted in the understanding that we need to be making stories from a place of vulnerability with the potential for social change.
Now, as a filmmaker, do you have a favorite movie? I know that's an impossible question almost. A favorite movie or a film that sort of started you on a journey as being a filmmaker?
Oh my goodness. Well, I write about it in Vantage Points, actually, that I had a very formative encounter with the original West Side Story. As a kid, it was one of the only VHS tapes that was available at my grandfather's cottage. And I would put it on and watch it on repeat, and as a way to, in some ways, keep the adults away, because nothing irritates adults more than watching the same thing over and over again.
Exactly.
And it was such a fascinating case study. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, when you're a jet all the way. From your first cigarette, you're a jet. So
you got it.
So West Side Story, and now would that be your favorite movie of all time, or do you have others?
Oh, I definitely, as someone who sort of came up in the world of media studies, my list of favorite movies is long, but I can say that I just recently re-encountered the contemporary film American Fiction, which I thought was a real genius portrait of the creative industry.
Tell me about that one. I don't recall American fiction. There's about 857 million movies that start with the title American. And then it's...
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so American Fiction is a 2023 film by Cord Jefferson, and it's about a frustrated novelist who's, sort of fed up with the writing establishment and the kind of diversity politics that have organized who gets to write what about whom and when, and he, in a fit of despair, writes a very satirical version of a novel that he absolutely hates that plays into all of the tropes that he's trying to avoid. And of course, it goes by.
Right. We saw that. He writes a blaxploitation kind of book, and then wins about 8 million awards from that. So
that's exactly right.
Oh, that's great.
And that's the reason why I think it's so smart, is because it's such a brilliant critique of the current moment, while also showcasing its own complicity and having to do some of the same things. And so I just thought it was a very smart intervention.
And it kind of also harks back to even Sunset Boulevard, where the aspiring writer who wants to write good stuff ends up selling out and writing a fictional story about a fictional movie star, and then ends up shot in a pool because he always wanted a pool. So Chase Joynt is with us. The book is Vantage Points. Please go out and get Vantage Points. It's unique in many different ways. I hate to say really unique, because you can't say that, but Vantage Points,
I'll take it,
on media as Trans Memoir. But just getting back to everyday life, can you describe your typical day for us?
Oh my goodness. I wake up, I immediately hit the coffee machine button and make a smoothie, and I tend to do a very quick blast of easy to accomplish work before settling into longer tasks. I go to yoga, and then I bounce between projects. I am someone who is always juggling many balls in the air. I try to end my days with longer walks, as I've been doing a lot of reading. As someone in my 40s, people are like, just don't worry so much about running. Just start moving your body in a different way. So I'm really taking that seriously and strapping on my walking shoes.
Because those shoes were made for walking, as we've heard.
Exactly right.
Exactly. What's next for you?
I had just finished a film with the extraordinary writer Julietta Singh called The Nest with the National Film Board of Canada, and we are gearing up for a premiere with high hopes for the top of this coming year.
This is great. This has been our quick chat with Chase Joynt. He's a very busy guy, as you can tell. Chase Joynt is Chase, and Joynt is Joynt. That's the greatest name I've ever heard, so thank you very much for selecting that to be your moniker. And Vantage Points, good luck with Vantage Points. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks so much for the chat.
Thank you for visiting with us today. This is Talking Books and Stuff with Dennis Rimmer. Contact him at dennis@talkingbooks.tk. Thank you, and may all the good news be yours. Oh, and don't forget to check out his book, The Great Canadian Notebook, available across Canada and at amazon.ca.